Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Some seniors in BC say they are fed up. They claim their pensions are not keeping up with the rising cost of living, and some fear they may soon be homeless. We're going to take you to a rally for the Tin Cup movement and what ralliers are asking for. In our second half hour, it is World Down Syndrome Day. We're going to speak with a Canadian actress on her campaign and why this year's theme is End the Stereotype. I'm Dan Burrett, in for Michelle Elliott this week. Welcome to BC Today. And thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1, as well as on CBC Television and CBC Online on our website and on the app, the free app. That's at cbc.ca/BC, as well as our YouTube page. We're everywhere. Seniors are rallying in several communities across BC right now, bringing attention to what they call shrinking pensions that are not keeping up with inflation and the rising cost of living. People have been gathering in Terrace, Prince George, Vernon, here in Vancouver, Ladysmith, as well as White Rock. The CBC's Michelle Gomez is going to join us live from one of those rallies in a moment. First of all, we want to hear from you. If you're a senior living on a fixed income, how are you managing the increasing cost of living? Where is it really pinching you? What are your biggest expenses? And what sort of help or relief are you looking for? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, the number is 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Michelle Gomez now joins us from the rally in White Rock. Michelle, thanks for being here. What's the mood there right now?
The mood is somber but optimistic. We're here outside MP Carrie Lynn Finley's office in White Rock today, where seniors are rallying against shrinking pensions. It's organized by grassroots movement Seniors Tin Cup, and this is not the only protest happening today. There are rallies across the province from seniors in cities like Prince Rupert, Terrace, Kamloops, and more.
And Michelle, what are the main messages from the people there that you've been speaking with?
They say they're in crisis over low pensions and high costs of living. I'm sure we've all felt the squeeze to some extent of rising living costs and inflation, but seniors say they are being hit particularly hard with pensions not rising to the same extent that minimum wage is. One study from United Way found 1 in 4 seniors in BC are living on less than $22,000 a year, and seniors are saying that's putting them in a tough spot, sometimes having to choose between essentials like housing, food, and medication.
And what are they hoping will change?
I'm here with organizer Sue Reed today. Sue, I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about what you're hoping will change and will come out of today.
What I'm hoping that will come out of today is attention brought to seniors living in poverty. They are only getting like $17,000 a year, and the poverty level is $25,000, just over $25,000, and seniors are living way below that. So, and we've seen them living on the streets, getting cans out of garbage cans. So we're here just to bring attention to seniors because they can't speak for themselves, some of them. So I'm here to speak for them, and I'm a senior myself. So, yes, that's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Sue. Lots of seniors struggling in the province and hoping change will come soon.
The CBC's Michelle Gomez live in White Rock. Thank you very much, Michelle. Now, as we said, if you're a senior living on a fixed income, how are you managing the increasing cost of living? What are your biggest expenses? And what sort of help or relief are you looking for? Please give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, the number is 604-669-3733. You can call us on your cell phone, pound 690. Please be pulled over or hands-free when you do that. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Among those calling for better supports for seniors is Ramona Captain. She is BC's Chief Advocacy and Communications Officer for the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, also known as CARP, and she joins us now. Ramona, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
When you see that rally going on and hear the concerns, what do you make of the Seniors Tin Cup movement right now?
It's a wonderful movement. The more seniors we have advocating, the better. I was going to be at the rally outside of Carrie Lynn Findley's office this morning, but unfortunately, I'm due for a hip replacement and walking is very, very difficult. Of course, surgical wait times are quite poor here in British Columbia as well as across Canada. But this tin cup movement, I think, will bring a lot of attention. CARP has been advocating for better pensions for eons now. Way back when, before our Prime Minister Trudeau was elected, we had him at a CARP annual general meeting. And then Prime Minister Harper had just raised the retirement age to 67. We advocated to have it taken back to 65, and Trudeau did keep his promise, so it is 65. However, CPP and OAS, as Tin Cup says, is not keeping up with inflation, not keeping up with a great deal. CARP has been successful in getting an increase. But it certainly is not enough, particularly in these times. We have women living in our back alley. We have women who are living in their cars, going to food banks. On Facebook, on any given day, you can see women asking if anybody has recycling, and there is one in particular who will come by and pick up any kind of bottles, cans, anything you have to get some extra money from recycle. That should not be happening today. We have actuaries. They knew that boomers were going to age. They knew we would be in need. And it seems that it's more of the same, more of the same.
We already have calls now. Chris joins us in Cranbrook. Chris, what is your situation?
Well, your guest has really hit the nail on the head. Okay? She really has. Because I have medical conditions, and the price of groceries and gas to fill up your vehicle, to go and buy groceries, like, I fill up my truck once a month, and I go and buy groceries once a month. And then yet rent and paying for pills for my medical condition, it does not help what I get from the government. So I'm just kind of venting. So
that's okay.
Yeah, but it's not enough, and I'm really supportive of this tin cup. I really am.
Chris, if I can ask you, you live in Cranbrook. It's a growing community, we know. Have you seen or do you know of other friends who are also seniors who are in similar situations?
Many.
What would make the biggest difference for you? Is it a raise in the CPP? Is it something specific you could point to?
Well, I think it would be lower the taxes on seniors.
In terms of just what?
Maybe introduce carbon tax. Get rid of that.
Okay.
For seniors.
Okay.
And, maybe if you show a senior citizenship card to a grocery store, you get like 15% off or something like that. Okay. Right?
Yeah. Chris, we appreciate your time, and I forgive me, we've got a few other calls, but I'm glad you were able to get in there. We're going to get to those calls in just a moment. But Ramona, what do you make of what you hear from Chris?
Yep, he's definitely suffering like many other seniors are, and grocery prices are going up. Many seniors are actually now even living in their cars or in campers. It's not even like they can buy proper food. They're at food banks. So it discounts, of course, are available, but they're just not that many of them that are out there. For example, just recently, one of our CARB members noticed that Loblaws was no longer offering a 50% discount on food that was still perfectly good, but it had to be used that day or the day after. And they were not offering the 50% off. They were saying, oh, now it's only 30% or 20%. A lot of seniors were depending on those. So our CARP member did complain, and Loblaws did backtrack and they did change it. So things like that are important, but really it's just not enough. For example, rents are enormous here in the Lower Mainland, all over British Columbia for that matter. And we have a safer program, and the most you can get to as a supplement for your rent is $800 plus some change. Nobody gets that amount, and you know what rents are right now.
Hmm.
So there are all kinds of renovictions going on, and where are people supposed to go? And what really disturbs me is I just said it before. It's not like our governments didn't know. There are actuaries. They knew that boomers were going to get older. And we know that people, once they hit about 75, 80, there are health conditions, there are all sorts of things. Many people are on blood pressure medication. Now we do have pharmacare coming, but still, we're not even sure exactly what it's going to be. And the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, we've presented what we feel pharmacare should be, and it shouldn't be this burlap approach. It
Mm.
should be a tightly woven cloth where everybody gets the same thing and we get the latest in drugs because it's so important that we all keep healthy.
Mm.
The other thing, of course, is the dental plan, but it's all based on income, which isn't such a bad thing, but it's still too high.
Yeah.
So things really have to change. Another thing too is keeping seniors safe from various things that are preventable, like the shingles vaccine. British Columbia does not offer a free shingles vaccine, and many seniors get shingles. It's really a wicked, wicked thing to have. And it costs a lot if you're going to pay for it yourself. It's upwards of 200, close to $300 because you need two shots. We should also be getting free RSV vaccines, respiratory diseases, high dose flu vaccines as well.
Mhm.
This will keep seniors safe and keep them out of emergency rooms and out of hospitals. And that's going to be a big
Mhm.
saving to our healthcare system. It's really so elementary.
I just want to clarify, flu vaccines are free in BC for most people, but you're talking about high dose vaccines. They're not offered for free?
That's correct. And NACI, which is the National Association, they recommend the high dose flu vaccine. And the high dose flu vaccine is offered in other provinces free of charge, but not in British
Mm.
Columbia. British Columbia seems to have its own rules about everything.
A lot of provinces certainly do that when we see various coverages. They vary province to province, similar to the point about pharmacare and dental care. I want to get to Rick in Elkford. Rick, I understand you're in a rather challenging position. What do you make of this tin cup movement?
I'm finding that they need to do a lot more. They need to. People need to realize. Pardon me.
It's okay.
That you
It's
don't
okay.
get what you need to get in. Well, I'm on pension. I get $1,875. Rent is $1,500. How do you live and buy food and survive on that? You have to give up everything you ever had. Like, that's not right. You didn't spend your whole life building up to a point just to lose it all at the end. This isn't right.
Rick, I appreciate you calling in. This is obviously unbelievably tough for you. Can I ask you, do you see amid what you're dealing with, is there something that would make the biggest difference for you that would ease off the screw a bit?
The realization that this small amounts that they're paying doesn't cover rent, today's enormous rents and food bills. Like, you don't need to look very hard. Yeah. How can you survive on? They're telling me I'm supposed to survive on $1,500 or $1,800, sorry, and my rent takes 15 of it. So where's my food, my clothes, my any kind of life? Where does it come from? You got to have at least, as far as I can figure, at least $2,600 to $2,800, or you're going to get nothing. You have nothing. You're going nowhere. Like, I know I paid my whole life. I paid the taxes. I worked heavy in construction. I paid huge $30,000-$40,000 in taxes in a year. And now when it's my turn, I can't even get a quarter of that. That's a joke. That's insulting.
Rick, I appreciate your time. Brave of you to call in and share with us your frustrations. And I suspect that a lot of people are feeling like you are. Ramona, I couldn't help but see your reaction to Rick. How many stories like his do you hear?
Many, many, and it breaks my heart when I could hear Rick's voice breaking, and like he said, he's contributed his entire life. He's paid taxes. We all have contributed, and then when it comes time for us to be taken care of, it just isn't there. I mean, even those of us who have saved all of our lives, and we've invested in RRSPs. Once we hit 71, we have to start withdrawing from our RIF. Our RRSP account turns into a RIF account, and we have to start taking money out so the government can get their taxes. Well, the government's going to get their taxes either today or tomorrow. So why not let us take out our RIF when we need it? So many seniors are afraid that they're going to outlive their savings. And so many seniors haven't even been able to contribute to our RSPs. You had to have had a proper job if you worked part-time, if you were a homemaker. If you were a homemaker, you could apply to get CPP top-up, but still it's not enough. I was working overseas and decided to take my CPP rather, when I was 60 years old. It's a pittance of what I paid into it for all the years I worked. I'm still working now at my age. I have 2 jobs. It's not that I don't love them. A lot of seniors love their jobs, but some of us just are not in a position to keep on working. And there lies the problem. How long does the government expect us to work?
Doug has been waiting on the line. Thanks for your patience, Doug. What's your situation?
Dan, I see a little over 2 Gs for CPP Old Age Security, and BC Housing sends me a little bit of safer, and every year it seems that my income tax, the retailer, my safer doesn't go up, it goes down. My old age security gets adjusted 4 times a year, so supplement isn't taxed, but at the same time, I live across the street where all these high-rises are going up like mushrooms out behind the barn, and I hear rents that are over $2,000. My rent will go up in June 3-something% as opposed to 2.1%. And the people that own my building, they have done a great job of holding it at 2.1 for a number of years. But safer needs to go up. In my case, I watch it year by year by year. It always goes down. Nobody says zip about, Ramona mentioned it, safer. And I'm just glad that I don't have a wife to support. I live on my own in a 1-bedroom apartment. I moved in the early 2000s. and so they can only index it so much. But I watched 50% of that just disappear to rent, and I get my bus pass for $45, but now I got to declare that. It's not taxed, but the government knows what it is. It comes provincially. I understand from a form I got the other day that social assistance is in there. I don't know what it's for. I guess it's something to do with the bus pass. And I'm a type 2 diabetic, so every so often I got to go in and pay my bill for that. I'm on 5 pills. I inherited it from my mother. I'm afraid to take an income or an injection because I don't know how the injection might react with the pills I'm taking for my diabetes. And to get my teeth cleaned, it's out of my own pocket for the time being. Thank God I found somebody out in Maple Ridge that gives me a senior's deduction. But as for seniors' deductions, that's a pipe dream that somebody's dreamt up in Ottawa, in that land where they don't live in the real world we live in. And I hate to sound like a bellyacher, but after a while, you just sort of, I left Air Canada back in Toronto in 1990 seeking a trade in Alberta, and it seems that every time I turn around, Gordon Campbell killed my job at BC Rail when he sold it out from under
Doug,
us.
I'm just going to jump in. I appreciate it. I know we're getting back into a bit of history there. Thank you for calling. Just want to clarify with you, Ramona, SAFER is the shelter aid for elderly renters through BC Housing. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. And our BC advocate, Isabel McKenzie, who is retiring at the end of this month, she's been talking about SAFER for a very long time, but she reports to the health minister rather than to the entire legislature. So all these wonderful reports that she puts out, I don't know where they go and what's happening, because if her reporting to the Minister of Health, it makes it sound like every senior is sick. And, some of us are, and some of us do need better health care, but we also need better pensions. And the seniors advocate should be reporting to the entire legislature, and the legislature should be acting on what her recommendations are. Now, we have a new seniors advocate coming on board next month. So let's see what happens there. Maybe he can do something about SAFER. We certainly need something to be done.
Yes. And Dan Levitt is the new seniors advocate in BC, taking over from Isabel McKenzie. We did request an interview with Dan Levitt today about the Tin Cup movement. He was not available, his office says, but if we do get a statement, we will work on that. We do have one email that I want to read. Give me just a sec. It's from Eve, who says, I'm a senior on fixed income, unable to survive on this income, forced to work 1 day a week. Rent went up in January by 3.5%, means I have to cut back on my food budget. Next year, the landlord will raise my rent again. I have no idea how I'll manage. I've suggested to the government seniors who are renting shouldn't get rent increases. It fell on deaf ears. There are other tax initiatives that could help, but the government is too stubborn to implement them. I am worried. As we approach the bottom of the hour, Ramona, if there is another message that you would either send to the finance minister, to BC's health minister, and, as we saw outside, to MPs, what is it? Are there one or two things that you would say this will make a difference?
Yes, definitely. Start channeling money where it's supposed to be channeled. For example, in Surrey, the province is trying to give Surrey billions of dollars for a police service, a new police service, where there isn't even a plan. Everyone I know doesn't want it, and yet the province is throwing money at that. Imagine what could be done with that money if it wasn't being channeled into something people don't want, and if it's been given to something that people need. Think of the difference. It would be amazing.
And we appreciate that. And just to clarify, I think we're in the hundreds of millions when it comes to the transition from the Surrey RCMP to the Surrey Police Force service. But I hear your sentiment. Ramona Captain, BC's Chief Advocacy and Communications Officer for the Canadian Association of Retired Persons. We very much appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
It is 1:30 in the Mountain Time Zone. You are listening to BC Today. Yesterday on the show, we talked about the 2024 World Happiness Report, which found many young people's happiness is decreasing, and plenty of you weighed in on that email. Christine writes, for me, happiness is not a complicated thing, as so many simple elements of my environment are worth celebrating. Just those simple everyday things like blossoming of the trees at this time of year or listening to Vivaldi. Also, the achievements in the lives of my siblings and my children, seeing them acquire something that delights them and really makes them happy. And Lisa writes, I'm a senior and a very positive thinking. In spite of challenges, I've been less happy lately thinking of the money spent on the wars, the money we need on arms in all its forms that could help our homeless here. Also making Lisa less happy, struggling to find a doctor, feeling unsafe walking around her city of Victoria. We appreciate all your emails. It's time now for a news break. Here's Susan McNamee. I was a little hasty on off the top there. We will get to Susan McNamee coming up in just a moment with your CBC News update. This is BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on YouTube and the CBC News app. Coming up, today is World Down Syndrome Day. We're going to speak with a Canadian actress about her campaign for acceptance, and we want to hear from you. That's after this news break, finally, with Susan McNamee.
Good afternoon. In the news, police in Victoria are investigating a fiery chain reaction crash that involved a transit bus. It happened last night near the busy intersection of Douglas and Bay Streets. Witnesses say a car traveling at high speed ran a red light and hit a truck. The truck then careened in front of the transit bus while the car burst into flames. There were no significant injuries on the bus, but the driver and passenger in the car and the truck driver were all taken to hospital. BC is adding an additional $39 million for local disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation projects through BC's Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. Emergency Management Minister Bowen Ma made the announcement as the province released its new strategy aimed at reducing the risk of flooding and responding to extreme events. Officials say local governments and First Nations will use the money for projects such as flood mapping and dike improvements. And open burning will be banned across much of northern BC starting 1 week from today. The BC Wildfire Service says there's a high grass fire hazard, and the ban in the Prince George Fire Centre aims to prevent human-caused wildfires while protecting public safety. The ban covers the region that saw massive burns last year. In the BC weather on the south coast, mainly sunny, possible showers overnight. Tomorrow cloudy with a 30% chance of showers, a high of 13. For the central interior, mainly sunny, a high of 5. Clear tomorrow with a high of 4. For the southern interior, cloudy with highs of 14 to 18. Friday, cloudy in the morning, a 30% chance of showers late in the afternoon, a high of 14. For the Kootenays, cloudy with a 30% chance of showers today and a high of 12. And up in the Peace, those periods of snow should be ending late this afternoon, then cloudy with a 40% chance of flurries for tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of -3. That's a brief look at the BC News headlines and BC weather, and I'll be back at 1 o'clock with all your latest local, national, and international news, and the weather too, Dan.
Sounds great. It's lovely to have you in the newsroom this week, Susan. Got to ask, how are the allergies?
You know what? I shouldn't sort of pray for rain, but when
Go
it's
ahead.
cloudy and overcast and a bit of rain, they're not so bad. So it's kind of a mixed blessing, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I've been wondering if the snuffling is due to that.
A little bit throaty, but a little medication
exactly.
helps too.
And I don't know how many decades we've lived here, but we should be used to this rain, right? This
Oh
is
my
this is what we
gosh.
expect.
Yeah, for me, it's over 4 decades now. So
Wow.
I'm become a West Coast wimp.
Yes. Join the club. It's okay. That's why we live here.
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan.
Take care.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and don't forget the YouTube page. We've been receiving a lot of your emails on our earlier segment about seniors on fixed incomes. I want to read a few of those now. Maurice writes, I'm looking for work again at age 70. My pension is not enough to pay for rent and everything else. My wife also works. Dee tells us, ready to retire next year, very concerned about surviving. Retired government support will not cover rent, let alone food and medical expenses. And if anything happened to the apartment building moving elsewhere with stupendous rental costs, would be completely unaffordable, a stressful worry, always in the back of one's mind. And we really appreciate all of your comments and those who called in with some very difficult stories. Those are tough to share, and we appreciate your bravery. Today is World Down Syndrome Day, a day designated by the United Nations to spread awareness of the unique gifts and challenges for people born with Down syndrome. Each year has a different theme and a video produced by Italian nonprofit Cour Down. This year's theme is End the Stereotype and stars Canadian actress and broadcaster Madison Tevlin. Here it is.
Hey bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita, so you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. Your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own, so you don't encourage me to live on my own. So I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder, so you don't train me to hit harder, so I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare, so you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
So I don't learn Shakespeare. E-I-E-I-O. But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. So you serve me a margarita. So I drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own. So I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder. So I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be? I learned Shakespeare. You assume I can swear, right? Assume that I can do that job. That I can go to parties. That I can have sex. That I can be on stage. Assume that I can. So maybe I will.
And we spoke with Madison Tevlin about her campaign earlier today. Madison, first of all, what does World Down Syndrome Day mean to you?
World Down Syndrome Day is a day that we get to celebrate me and everyone with Down syndrome. We should celebrate our differences not just today, but every day.
Now, your ad for this year is called Assume I Can. It's very powerful, and it's also a bit humorous. Tell us how you became involved in this.
Well, thank you for this question. So, NDSS reached out to me and asked me to do a self-tape. And I went to film in Barcelona and was one of the best experiences of my life for sure. And I had so much fun making this campaign.
What was it like to actually make the video? How long did it take? And was it a challenge?
It really wasn't a challenge for me. It was more what I expected it to look like because I was in a movie with champions as well. So when I walked on set, it was just like I made me feel so comfortable and at home and that I was ready to make this film. And I loved everyone there. It was so much fun. Very perfect experience getting there and having so much fun.
So you challenge a lot of assumptions in this video, whether it's, you ordering a drink or talking about very personal things. How do you think we can empower people with Down syndrome?
People always assume that I can't do something, which is not right. Like peeling a banana or like doing a towel. That's so easy. It's part of life. Everyone goes through this. Everyone does this. Drinking, swearing, like all that stuff. It's part of life. And this campaign, I feel so moving and so powerful that people can really relate to and get back to the story that we have Down syndrome, but it's the least interesting thing about us. It's a part of me, but it's not all of us. And we should all focus on our differences and not just how we are the same.
You've accomplished a lot in your career already. You're an actress. You've done this campaign, and you got fame as a 12-year-old singing All of Me by John Legend. You won that award for your show, Who Do You Think I Am? And now this ad for World Down Syndrome Day. What are you going to do next?
I have so much coming up for me next, but I am talking at the Dear Moms Conference, and I'm hoping to get a season 2 of Who Do You Think I Am? And I always say that I'm a big talker and I love asking lots of questions and really getting to know somebody of who they really are on the inside and out.
Madison Tevlin, Canadian actress and broadcaster, we really appreciate your time. Nicely done.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And we are celebrating World Down Syndrome Day today. We're asking you, what does it mean to you? How do you foster acceptance and push back against assumptions and stereotypes? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, and text us, 236-330-2623. We're now joined by the president of Down Syndrome BC and broadcaster Tamara Taggart. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, you were smiling and nodding along as we watched Madison there. You've met her.
I love Madison. Yeah, she spoke at we had a summit last October, and she was our keynote speaker. And the thing about Madison is when she walks in the room, she lights up the entire room. She is a superstar for sure.
And that video, if people haven't seen it, you can find it online. I mean, we had to bleep out some swearing in there. She talks about, but there's some very personal things, whether it's ordering a drink or living on your own or talking about sex. Really does challenge some assumptions that I think a lot of people would have about people that live with Down syndrome.
I mean, I think so. It's different for me now because my son is 16. I mean, he tells me where to go all the time. And he sticks up his middle finger, but he sticks up the wrong finger. So, I mean, he's getting there. I always say my son Beckett or Madison or anybody with Down syndrome, they're no different than you and I. They want to do all the same things that we want to do. I mean, they're happy. They have relationships. They want to live on their own. And that's the biggest thing I've always heard is stop treating us like kids. You know what I mean? Like even when somebody with Down syndrome is in their 30s, people have the tendency to talk to them like they're a baby or a child or they can't do anything.
And that, you said Beckett your son is 16 years old now.
Yeah.
What has that journey been like for him and for you to see him grow up, living with Down syndrome, but having to I'm making an assumption, having to challenge all these stereotypes as a parent as well as the person living with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat things and say that it's been easy. But the hard parts haven't been Beckett. The hard parts have been society. The hard parts have been his access to education or his access to healthcare or to, getting a job, employment, whatever it might be. So those are the challenges because society as a whole, we used to put people like Madison or Beckett or other people into an institution from birth. And it wasn't that long ago, right? Woodlands closed down in 1996 here in BC, in New Westminster. So it wasn't very long ago. So we have a long way to go as a society. But people in the Down syndrome community, we already know what Madison just showed in that video. None of that is news to us, right? It's news to typical people, if you will, because I don't mean you personally, but people in general think, oh, you have Down syndrome and therefore you're not as worthy as I am, or you don't, they assume you have access to all the same things. It's not true. I mean, my son is in a segregated classroom in high school in Vancouver.
And you've talked about this quite openly on social media about the challenges that he has had in school. What is the latest on that, if I can ask?
Well, Beckett and I actually had a meeting with Minister Lohr last week from MCFD talking about what people with Down syndrome in this province need. And, no matter what government it is, it doesn't matter. They're all the same when it comes to saying they're listening, but they're not. So we still have a long way to go. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. That's what it feels like as a parent. It feels like Groundhog Day. Every school year is the same thing, telling you how great my son is, but he needs support. But, it's the same thing all the time. So by the time you get to, have a teenager on your hands, you're kind of tired of all the nice talk and you're ready to just sort of like...
You want some action?
I want action. Yeah, it's enough is enough. 16 years and, we're not the only ones, right?
How do you, off the top of your head, do you know how many people live with Down syndrome in BC?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And so the official question is no, because no one keeps track of that. There are no statistics for anyone with Down syndrome in the country. So we don't know how many people in Canada have Down syndrome. We don't know how many people in British Columbia do. We don't know how many kids there are. We don't know how many adults we are. We don't know how many people are living in care of the province. We have no idea. So we can only guesstimate. So we'd say there's about 1,200 kids with Down syndrome in BC.
Right.
And I've heard numbers, there's like 13,000 in Canada. I have no idea because...
Well, I guess there's an example now of wanting to look at getting better statistics.
Yeah.
And...
We've been trying to
do, Statistics BC, whoever wants to do this. We have a caller now. Let's go to Cody in Trail. Cody, thanks for calling in. What do you make of World Down Syndrome Day?
What I make of World Down Syndrome Day, Dan, and it's great to see Tamara back on television. I used to watch her on CTV when she was a weather person, and I think I had a chance to meet her, or I had a chance to be at an event that she emceed in 2009. It was the Special Olympics provincials in Abbotsford.
Oh. I remember that.
Yeah, with Wally Buono.
I remember, yes.
So World Down Syndrome Day, what it means to me is being a champion for change, because ever since I've been growing up, and it's almost 38 years because I will be 38 in June, basically, there's been a lot of people that in my life, a lot of negative people that said I was never going to amount to anything. I wasn't going to amount to a hill of beans. And pretty much I had to go out and I had to prove it. By graduating high school in 2005, I was one of 176 in my graduating class. Basically did a standing ovation in the hockey arena that we were in, which meant a lot to me, and having my dad there was special because I lost my dad 7 years ago, and he was a role model to me. And basically, he was in my corner from day one till the end. And so I pretty much had to go out and prove everything to everybody that said, oh, you won't amount to anything and all that. And I was like, okay, well... Like, here I am, I'm walking across the stage and accepting a diploma, my high school diploma, like almost 20 years ago. And then I went on to write a book, and I've met Rick Hansen and people that inspire me. So, and it's because of Tamara and people like you, Dan, and the work that you guys do that I also wanted to, I want to become a broadcaster eventually, so I'm wondering if Tamara has any tips or any.
If I had any tips, I'd still be in broadcasting.
There's a book.
That want to get into the business.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we need hours to talk about
That's
this.
another open line there, Cody.
Boy, oh boy, Cody, we need to talk. We need to talk. But you have a great voice, and you've done wonderful things with your life. And for you to remember 2009, that was so long ago now, 14 years, and it's really good to hear your voice. And I think you're the kind of person that whatever you set your mind to, you will do it for sure.
Cody, can I ask you? I understand you have a close friend of yours who has Down syndrome. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I have a close friend of mine, Miel Mack. She used to live in Kitsilano, and her and her mom moved up here many years ago. And she wrote a book called Snapshots of a Soul Place. It's by Carrie Burke. I would highly recommend that people try to find it, or it might even be online. And then Miel did a video when she was about 5 with her grandfather, Rick Scott, who is very famous, and it was called Angels Do. And it was the most requested video on Treehouse TV. So if you find it on YouTube, you can find it on YouTube if you search Angels Do Rick Scott. There's a video where he introduces the song, and then you get to see Miel, and it was shot on an 8mm camera when she was about 5, and they had to coax her into the angel costume.
Yeah,
it sounds like it is worth checking out. Cody, thanks so much for your call. We really do appreciate it. Tamara, I want to ask you about when it comes to assumptions and challenging assumptions. We hear sometimes that people are seen as inspirations. And we've heard from others who, regardless of whatever health challenges or whatever else they're living with, that they don't want to be seen as an inspiration. No. They want to be seen as someone else. What about that conflict?
Well, I mean, it's called inspiration porn. That's what it's called. And it was a real reckoning for me, coming out of television and learning about inspiration porn and realizing that's how we ended the news every single day, with a heartfelt story of somebody with a disability going to prom. That's inspiration porn. You shouldn't be. Why is it news that somebody with Down syndrome got asked to the prom? That's just going to the prom. But we've turned it, able-bodied people, typical people, if you will, have looked at it as, look what we've done. Oh, this is so nice, right? And so that's how we think about disability. And that's not. We've created these two different worlds, right? Where the typical person will help the disabled person by doing something nice, like taking them for an ice cream. Oh, isn't that inspirational for them to go for ice cream and try it for the first time? And we'll do a news story on it, or we'll show it on, Twitter or whatever it might be. So, I mean, that's what it's called. And I didn't know what it was, prior to. So this is the thing about listening to disabled people. You learn from disabled people. Disabled people will tell us, able-bodied people, how to be in this world, right? We've built this world for people like us.
Right.
That's not reality. 25% of Canadians identify as having a disability. That's a big number. And if that's the case, are we all hiding disability? Are we all ashamed of disability? What do we feel about disability? So stereotypes are not the disabled person's fault. They're the typical person's fault. This is how we've built our world.
We have time for another caller. I think we have Greg in Maple Ridge. Thanks for joining us, Greg. What's going through your mind this day?
Hi, thank you very much. I only have a question. Last year, I watched this Netflix show, a series. It was called Down for Love. And it was about people with Down syndrome trying to meet up with other people from with Down syndrome, to go on dates and perhaps become couples. And there was a whole season, and now there's a second season. I haven't watched any of the second season, but I did watch the first one, and it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's like that show also, Love on the Spectrum, right? About people with autism dating, right? And again, it's so interesting that we assume that people who have Down syndrome, right, wouldn't date or want to have sex or get married or whatever it might be. And so I agree, that show is fantastic. I haven't seen the second season yet either, but that's what we have to do, right? Like we learn from a young age to be accepting. So excluding people is something that we are groomed to believe in. Right? When we're kids, we accept everybody. All of a sudden we get to high school, now my son's segregated. What does that teach all the other kids? It teaches them that people like my son should be shut away. And people like Madison are saying, no,
So we really appreciate your time and your perspective, Tamara. Short of changing policy, getting more resources for those who have Down syndrome and other things, for those who don't live with it, but may know somebody who does, do you have, through Down Syndrome BC, are there strategies, methods that you recommend for people so they don't come across and are not talking down to people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a learning process, right? And I've learned too as a parent. I learn every day. We all are learning all the time. I'm learning from my son. My recommendation is, check out the Down Syndrome Resource Foundation in Burnaby, or the Canadian Down Syndrome Society, or we are a parent group called Down Syndrome BC. We don't take any government money, and all we do is provide resources, and we advocate for change. And my advice is just to say hi the next time you see somebody with Down syndrome, or just talk to them just like you would a regular person. That's all anybody ever wants, right? Is somebody with Down syndrome is just like you, except they happen to have an extra chromosome.
Tamara Taggart, president of Down Syndrome BC, longtime broadcaster in BC. We really appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you.
And that is it for our show today. Thank you for calling in and joining the discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.